I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics. Messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for December the 31st, 2025. Today is New Year's Eve on the secular calendar. Planet Earth is finishing up yet another orbit around the sun. And it's very natural for us to look back on a lot of the things which have taken place in calendar year 2025 and look forward to calendar year 2026. I did tweet earlier, those of you who follow me on X, formerly Twitter, that 2019, not 2025, but 2019 was one of the most difficult years I've ever had. And many of you are aware that we had an unplanned move. We had to quickly find a new home. We had to go through a lot of remodeling. There were some spiritual issues which took place behind the scenes. We had a death in the family, which changed the dynamics permanently. We also had a big, huge bump along the road professionally behind the scenes. We actually had our website shut down for 6 weeks or so. And to the point where some people thought we had left the faith, we had abandoned Yeshua, which was not the case. But we had a lot of things go on. We had to go through a professional ministry reboot. And since then, we haven't had anything come close to that year of just significant change. Nevertheless, 2025 has not been an easy year, but it has been better than most. Did have a bump along the way, but nothing which we couldn't resolve. And, looking ahead, what is calendar year 2026 going to involve? So I said, look, 2019 was one of the most difficult years ever. I almost gave up. Nevertheless, here we are getting ready to go into 2026. And I sincerely hope and pray that calendar year 2026 is one of the best years for me, and it's one of the best years for you as well. Now, if you have not, please do. Here we have Messianicapologetics.net. We've had this banner on our website for a little while. Special year-end offering. Click there and you'll be taken to Outreach Israel Ministries. Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics need a special year-end gift and unique encouragement. I want to bless them for 2026. We certainly appreciate those of you who have given us a special year-end offering. We got a lot that we're going to be doing in calendar year 2026. And I'd like to go through some of that today as we reflect back on what has happened. One of the ongoing projects which we have, Messianic Apologetics, is our ministry publications and books are on a rotating cycle. And much of this has to do with the experiences I have had over the past 5 to 10 years, certainly since we relocated back to the DFW area, 2012, 2013. It was 7 years ago. I was getting ready to go to my first IAMCS, that's the International Alliance of Messianic Congregations and Synagogues Rabbis Conference. That's where I was licensed as a Messianic teacher. And then 3 years later, in 2022, I was formally ordained as a Messianic teacher. And I had a lot of experiences going through the ordination process with learning about the history of the modern Messianic Jewish movement, learning about Judaism, contemporary Judaism, things which I could not get at seminary, and things which a lot of people within our sphere of influence are not as familiar with as they should be. So going through the process of ordination was, very much a part of my ongoing education. but it was also, of just, a huge affirmation that, I'm approved by a sphere of my peers, those who have preceded me in Messianic ministry and service. So in terms of our ongoing cycle of updating ministry publications and what have you, there is a necessity to factor in our experiences living out here in North Texas, interacting with a huge array of Messianic leaders, getting to know some of these people personally, getting to see some of the changes which have taken place over the past decade or so. Not necessarily changes which have occurred with us. Yeah, we've made some modifications here and there, but nothing drastic yet. Integrating those factors of the original Messianic Jewish mission, Jewish outreach, Jewish evangelism, Israel solidarity, now standing against anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, anti-Judaism, incorporating those things much more consciously than we did before. Also factoring in the state of the movement on the ground, what is coming in the next 10 to 15 years. Is there even going to be a formal Messianic Jewish movement in the diaspora and in North America? This is why this next week we go to an IMCS Rabbis Conference to, in a discerning way, ask the Lord, what is our future going to be like? So 2025 definitely saw the update of a wide number of our titles. I did the math. We updated 10 of our titles. We only have 10 or so titles left to go in terms of the live resources we've got right now. For right now, I'm working through a combined edition of Salvation on the Line, volumes 1 and 2. It's one of those things where people get volume 1, they forget there's a volume 2. That deals with the nature of Yeshua, his divinity. Started work on that, 10 days ago. So I'll keep you up to speed on that. That's a huge one, which is important. Just completed updating our Galatians for the Practical Messianic volume. In fact, I just got the update this morning that it had been approved. So the next two commentaries, which are slated for update, are 1st and 2nd Corinthians. I thought it was going to be Hebrews, but the Lord just kind of naturally said, you're going to do 1st and 2nd Corinthians next, because there are probably going to be some developments with Hebrews later in the year you're going to have to work through. So okay, we can do that. And there are a number of titles after that which are not like hugely important because they don't sell as many of them as some of the others, like the Confronting Critical Issues volume, Israel and Future Prophecy volume. One of the main things I am forecasting ahead, and more of this will come, I think, as we move into the year. What are we going to do about issues of Messianic prophecy and just the end times? Because that is, of course, something which is very important to me. How are we going to address the Messiahship of Yeshua? How are we going to address the end times? Earlier, I thought we would address those two matters separately. Now I'm much more along the lines of let's address them concurrently together. But all we have right now are open files on that. Likewise, there's the issue of how do we confront replacement theology, supersessionism more specifically? Do we do that with adding new frequently asked questions entries? There is a volume 2. Let me take you to that if you've never seen it before. There is a volume 2 series of frequently asked questions entries. So here we have the FAQs tab here. You click on volume 2. This is not on any particular schedule, but these are new entries which are added periodically, and it's been going on since 2022. So we'll just wait and see what kind of progress we're supposed to make in the next year regarding that. But do we work on an actual book dealing with replacement theology, an actual publication, or we just address it, here and there as things come about? So those are a number of things I have to sort through. The publishing area, it's not an easy field in which to serve because of all the things which go on behind the scenes. A lot of you think that ministry is mostly, Bible study, staying up to speed with scholarship, reading new books and new articles. And actually, I would have to say about 2/3 of what I do is, keeping the things moving, making sure that we are compliant with all the terms and conditions out there we have to be compliant with. I specifically pray every day for protection from threats known and unknown, our online ministry footprint, different social media venues, different other things we've got to use. There is, whether you like it or not, a business aspect to being in ministry. We don't talk about it that often, but it is something which can cause one to be anxious, can cause one to be concerned. Did we do this right? Did we not do this right? We've got to go fix this. We got to go fix that. Many of you just think that it's all about the word and being spiritually fed. And certainly that is a huge aspect, but there's this other aspect which makes sure that the live stream goes at the right time. The live stream is functioning properly. We're compliant where we need to be compliant. And sometimes I don't share that enough with you because, that's a huge burden, it's a huge strain on me. And for example, this past year, we had a bump along the road. Okay, we did. And one of the things which came as a result of that is Messianic Insider going 5 times a week. But still, it was something where we had to slow down, had to stop, had to perform an internal audit. So far, so good, but still, these things do happen, and because they are not in the realm of theology or Bible study or spirituality, it's business on the ground. We don't tend to share that with you all, but it was taken care of. And yeah, I've got some things hanging out there which are concerns, but so far nothing has happened, and that's good. Now, the big thing which is going to happen in 2026, if nothing else happens, is our family will formally have been a part of the Messianic movement for 30 years. And that's going to hit officially in 2026. Now, part of our family's testimony is the Lord brought us in the fall high holidays, 1995. But for the rest of 1995 and even into 1996, we were still going to the Messianic Jewish congregation on Shabbat and going to church on Sunday. By the spring of 1996, we were pretty much fully involved in the Messianic movement on Saturday, on Shabbat, and certainly by the fall high holidays of 1996, we were just fully involved in the Messianic movement. 1996 was the year my parents went to the Messiah Conference in Grantham, Pennsylvania, MJAA, and then later they went to Sturbridge, Massachusetts to the UMJC. They decided at the time they liked the spirituality of the MJAA a whole lot better than the UMJC, and that still remains true today. But of course, as we sort through the past 30 years, there are going to be, moments when we review, this decision we made, this decision we didn't make. These are some of the things which have happened. These are some of the things which have not happened. It has not always been easy to stay in the Messianic movement. There have been some points along the way, some incidents where other people, to be perfectly candid, would have given up. They would have said, I still believe God is working with Israel, the Jewish people. There's a lot of things you can be spiritually enriched by: the Sabbath, the festivals, daily, weekly Torah study. But do I want to be, permanently locked to this community, which has got more spiritual issues, more sociological issues than many evangelical communities do? And there have been points along the way, and I've acknowledged this, those of you who followed me over the years, where there's been a season when I've disagreed more with the Messianic community than agreed with it. And, I hold the Messianic movement to the same standard as my late father's Sunday school class from 1987 to 1992. So, 38, 39 years ago. And still, from time to time, it doesn't reach that standard. And unfortunately, as we look ahead, we know that they're not going to be the kinds of changes that we personally as a family need. Areas we do look for improvement. This is not new for those of you who have followed me over the years. I still want to be able to see. I want to still be able to have some kind of an open discussion on early Genesis matters, Genesis chapters 1 through 11. That's not very easy for today's Messianic community for some reason. Number two, we need to be able to see a better handle on men and women, gender roles, and women in leadership. For some reason, this likewise is not an easy area for today's Messianic community to explore. There are people out there who feel the same way I do about this, so I'm not alone, but it's just not an area that today's Messianic community does very well with. Likewise, our overall biblical studies, how much have they improved over 30 years? How many people are out there who think that the Torah has been perfectly preserved letter by letter and stroke by stroke since Mount Sinai? That is not a position that conservatives hold to. They do believe it's been preserved well, but perfectly since Sinai, no, that is a little too fundamentalist. Likewise, there are scores of Messianic Jewish leaders and teachers who still secretly believe that the apostolic writings, the New Testament, was all originally written in Hebrew. I can tell you right now that's a fantasy, and that is going to hold us back from actually addressing some of the real controversies of the day. But our overall biblical studies, it's still in a relatively elementary level, and that's not good, especially with criticisms against the Bible, criticisms against its integrity coming down the pike. We remember from over 20 years ago the whole Hebrews incident. That would have been a time when our family could have legitimately told the Lord, there's a lot the Messianic community offers, but do we really want to stay in this if we're just going to go from drama to drama to drama like this? The polygamy issue, that's another kind of drama, which could have caused us to say, hey, Messianic community's got potential, but this is an issue. So we're going to be reflecting back 30 years of experience, 30 years of the work we've had to do. Thankful that the Lord has preserved us and kept us going in spite of some of the things which have definitely challenged our ongoing participation. Now, some of the things which are coming in the next year, the next several years, which are going to be major points of division within the Messianic sphere of influence. And some of you all already know this. Some of you are aware of this as you monitor different ministries, different groups, different persons of influence. And that is the two large sectors mainly labeled as either one law or distinction theology. And those of you all who have followed me over the years, the more recent years, know that I'm not happy about either group. I'm not happy about the rigidity, which both demonstrate in their own ways. I'm not happy about why we can't seem to think in terms of some third and fourth alternatives. I'm not happy about a lot of the spirituality they interject into the Messianic experience. One law, as we should very much be aware of, for today's Messianic sphere of influence, that controversy is not too different than 6 days is regarding Genesis 1 for a lot of Christianity. There are some very smart people who came up with one law or one Torah theology, but their fundamentalist orientation, their fundamentalist training background can be pretty obvious sometimes when you say, okay, you want us to be able to understand scripture in context, a passage in context. Now, what does the terminology one law or one statute mean in certain particular passages? And then it's like, and some of these areas like uniform capital punishment for the native and sojourner in ancient Israel, those have been affected by the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua. And so when you invoke that your movement, your sub-movement focuses on one law, number one, what did it actually mean in the specific context of a passage? And number two, are you invoking some spiritual dynamics like uniform capital punishment, which, by the way, Yeshua took upon himself in his sacrifice on the tree? So for sometime next year, we will be going through my analysis, approaching one law controversies. A number of you have asked me directly to do that. It'll be a multi-part series. And one of the things which we have to wait on in terms of what one law will become is, what do you do with this emerging pronomian or pronomian Christian movement? Is it just going to be one law 2.0, or is it going to be able to break out of that? I'm not optimistic that it's going to be able to break away from some of the legalism, rigidity, and fundamentalism of one law. Now, on the other side, you've got a lot of people emphasizing distinction theology. And I want to make it perfectly clear that we're not all the same, okay? There are differences, there are distinctions between Jewish and non-Jewish believers. In the Torah, native and sojourner were not 100% identical, as one law tends to falsely teach, okay? So I'm not here to say that there are not differences and distinctions. However, one of the things I can definitely tell you from our family over 30 years now, we have had a big problem with sectors of the Messianic community which overplay differences and distinctions among God's people, and there is not enough of an emphasis on common faith, common salvation. The first thing people need to know when they enter into an assembly is we're all brothers and sisters in the Lord. We all have the common hope of salvation. We all have the same redemption. We all serve the same Lord. We're to be focusing on elements of common faith first. But a lot of the Messianic community has never done that. And, look at the demographics of the Messianic community today. How many non-fundamentalist Christians, how many evangelical believers are truly being attracted into the Messianic community? How many families like mine do you see in the Messianic community? Not very many. And of course, the reason is we expect to see an emphasis on common faith first. We understand that there are differences. We understand that there are distinctions. We've never argued that we're all 100% or near 100% the same. But we do believe it's better to focus on what we have in common first, emphasize that we have more in common than not, and then from there, we can understand the particular role or the particular assignment or tasks we're to perform. Messianic community has never done that very well, and I don't believe it will change. I will issue my point of view, my criticisms of such a view, but I don't think it will change. I think that we do have far too many people who are insecure and unstable, and people who are insecure and unstable focus on differences first rather than common faith first. And unless people have some kind of a moment where they have to confront who they are before the Creator, confront who they are before God, you're not going to be able to see a movement which focuses on common faith first. Look, we're not all the same. So there are distinctions. I acknowledge that. But to focus one's attention principally on differences first rather than common faith first is wrong. And after 30 years, I'm going to call it out as I see it. Now, for me, as we move ahead into calendar year 2026, one of the biggest things, of course, is going to be, so much of what we do in apologetics, defense of the faith, is having to sort through other people's problems, the problems you bring to me, the problems I encounter out there. What is important to me? What is important to me, which some of these things distract us from? And the things you're going to see us talk about more and more frequently, and these will be in process as we move ahead, of course, we're going to talk about the end times a lot more. okay, since 2020, since we had the lockdowns. And yes, we had a lot of lessons to learn from those. A lot of people spoke presumptuously. A lot of people said things they shouldn't have. But nevertheless, since 2020, God has been trying to get our collective attention regarding when we are. And so we're going to be talking about eschatology more. Of course, a big thing we released this past year was the combined When Will the Messiah Return? Dangers of Pre-Tribulationism volume. Uh, as we work through Salvation on the Line and get that updated and combined together, I'm going to be asking the Lord, okay, what do we do about Messianic prophecy? What do we do about end times? And I'll get some answers, I'm sure. Likewise, a big part of what we're going to be doing is discussing current events. Who out there in the Messianic world discusses current events? Now, we deal with things which are out there, publicly available for all to see. So we're not talking about, well, I know somebody at organization XYZ. I know somebody at agency ABC. I know somebody in Israel. I know a guy. No, we're not dealing with rumor and innuendo. We're dealing with things which are out there, open for everyone to see, open source. In fact, one of the main places I look at is open source intel on X. There's also open source intel defender. There are others, but we have to monitor current events because there have been a lot of things which have occurred in the past year. A lot of people are not talking about in the Messianic world. Today, right now, as we speak, what is garnering everyone's attention? The riots in Iran and the call for the crown prince, exiled crown prince, to return and for the Islamo-fascist regime to be overthrown. That is taking place right now, today. And certainly, while we don't want to be caught reading messages from current events into Bible prophecy, we still need to know what's going on. And we don't need to wait for the next drama for things to, like, okay, what do I do with this or what do I do with that? So we need to be monitoring current events. Now, as we prepare to leave for the IMCS Rabbis Conference, and I'll close our theology roundup with this. When I left last year, I got sick on the airplane and I was in bed for 2 days before the actual conference. And when I was there, that's when I figured out, okay, I need to look into this thing called StreamYard. That's the software we use for broadcasting, and how you use, the different screens and how you can, use your mouse and all this. And so I played around with that. And then also just kind of this nice nudge, you're going to have to start dealing with current events. You're going to have to start dealing with current events. And we did go through a period of a few months of, pre-recorded episodes, Messianic Insider. We did the news first, then we did theology afterwards. When we decided to go 5 times a week, that's when it's like, no, do the theology first and then do the news afterward. Some of you have asked me, would you do the news first and then do the theology? Others, would you do theology, then do news? Others, could you do theology and do news separate? And actually, we can't do that. I don't have the time to do 2 live streams a day. But that was the biggest change this year, theology and news. And how many people are really discussing that? Because there are a lot of things which have taken place, from the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine. Here on the American home front, we have a new pope now. We're looking what's taking place in Iran. We've got other questions, and we've got to talk about them. And so we'll, of course, see what the news cycle brings in 2026, and along with that, the religious news cycle. But as I like to say, everything we do is part of an ongoing conversation. An ongoing conversation we have to make sure that we are talking about what God is doing. We are aware of the developments in today's Messianic community, that we're staying up to date as best as we can, and that we're not too surprised when certain dramatic things occur. And my goal, as I've said many, many times, is to do my best to facilitate stability, because that is what we need more than anything else. We need stability. And perhaps in the next year, some of you all will have to have that spiritual time with the Lord. Who am I? What am I doing? What am I not doing? And what are some changes I need to enact in my own life and in my own faith experience as things are getting darker and they're getting more and more uncertain? So, okay, so that concludes our theology roundup, looking back at 2025 and looking ahead, looking forward to 2026. All right, so now let's go into our news roundup. And of course, we do the news roundup after the theology roundup because the news is time sensitive and it changes from day to day. All of the news stories I'm about to go through, these will be available for you to look at later when this episode is archived at messianicapologetics.net. Okay, and then we have a lot of news stories about Iran. Okay, this was from open source intel yesterday, December the 30th. You can read this in its entirety, but here we have Reza Pahlavi. He's the exiled crown prince in a message to the protesters in Iran. So mainly, he is calling on these people to join in with the protests, the strikes against the Islamo-fascist regime, which overthrew his father. And I know that a lot of us, we've been praying since the 12-day war, even before the 12-day war, for the current Iranian regime to be overthrown. Okay, here's a very sad story, open source intel. Tatiana Schlossberg, daughter of Carolyn Kennedy, the former U.S. ambassador to Australia and Japan, and the only surviving child of former U.S. President John F. Kennedy, has passed away. And I don't know all the details of Schlossberg's death, but of course it does involve the Kennedys. They are one of those families that is the closest to any kind of royal family the United States has. And it's just sad. A lot of us, when we look at the Kennedys, we see more tragedy, more difficulty than we do hope. And it should make all of us be very thankful for our good health and our peace of mind. Okay, so here from open source intel, we have, this is from yesterday morning, 10:47 a.m. Loss of crowd control. Tehran will keep state offices, schools, universities, and banks closed tomorrow due to extreme cold and energy shortages. But in actuality, it's probably due to ongoing strikes, ongoing protests against the Iranian regime. And of course, we know this is something which changes from day to day, moment to moment, but we need to be aware of this. Yeah, most of our stories are about the what's happening in Iran right now. Okay, so another one from Visegrad 24. This is from yesterday at 5:07 p.m. A large group of protesters march at Tehran's Grand Bazaar on while chanting, "Long live the Shah." They support Iranian Crown Prince Pahlavi Reza. Okay, so there are definitely people right now in Iran. They're calling for the return of the old guard because they know that what the Ayatollahs have done to their country is just really very bad. Okay, now here's a post from Visegrad 24. It's 23 seconds. We need the real Iran back. I recommend you watch that, just kind of a refresher on what Iran used to be before the fall of the Shah in 79. Okay, so here's another one from Visegrad 24 yesterday at 5:26 p.m. breaking escalating clashes between anti-regime protesters and Islamic regime forces on the streets of Iran. Okay, so yeah, this is going on. Now, of course, we know that there has been pushback from the Iranian regime. That's to be expected. But is this going to just continue to build? We're going to see the current Iranian regime fold. I know that's what a lot of us are hoping and praying for. Okay, along with that, here's another one from Visegrad 24, 8:13 p.m. The anti-regime protesters in the city of Hamadan in Iran are still in control of the streets 3 nights into the countrywide mass protests. They are chanting F Khamenei. So that's the Ayatollah. So yeah, this is going on, and we wait. Okay, we're going to slightly break this up. 4 more stories left. One of them not dealing with the situation in Iran. This is kind of interesting. This is from open source intel this yesterday, December the 30th. And I thought it was interesting because it's local. Amazon has rolled out drone deliveries in the Dallas area, drawing mixed reactions from residents, some of whom complain about persistent buzzing overhead. The drones, which deliver packages of up to 5 pounds within a roughly 8-mile range in about 30 minutes, cost Prime members $4.99 per delivery, with even some critics calling the service convenient despite the noise. Okay, so I have not seen any drones yet in our area. I'm sure this is going to be something which they just kind of test here and there, see if it works. There are a lot of course, questions we all have regarding this. Some of us, we do benefit from Amazon Prime. We can get a product on our doorstep the next day sometimes. But do we really want to see these things buzzing around our neighborhoods? Okay, 3 more stories, and then we will conclude. More on the Iranian situation. Now, this is from the Persian Jewess on X, posted yesterday, 3:58 p.m. Now, this is what we have to keep in mind, because this, I think, more than anything else, is the main reason we're seeing these protests now. 1978, $1 equals 70 Iranian rials. 2015, $1 equals 30,000 Iranian rials. 2025, $1 equals 1,400,000 Iranian rials. In 46 years, the Islamic regime didn't just mismanage Iran. It obliterated its currency, its economy, and the future of its people. Iranians have had enough. It's one thing to restrict your religious freedom, your freedom of expression, places you can go, things you have to wear, that kind of thing. It's another thing to hit you economically. And when you have the Iranian currency worth less than toilet paper, as it were, that is, of course, when people say, hey, enough is enough. How far are we going to let the Iranian currency just, plummet against other major world currencies? We're going to wait till it's 10 million rials to a US dollar, 100 million rials to a US dollar. You all get the point. Okay, open source intel. There's a 33-second clip here. In Tehran, footage shows a young man scrawling a monarchist slogan on a street billboard, writing, "This is the last battle. Pahlavi will return." Okay. So that just gives you an idea about what is taking place right now. Of course, we know this could change either way. We do have to be realistic. And then finally, here's another one also from open source intel from this morning, 10:24 a.m. Tehran, in a bold show of defiance, merchants across Tehran's iconic bazaar shut their shops and confronted the regime security forces as swelling crowds of protesters take to the streets. So, what are we going to see in the next week, the next month, next year at this time? Are we going to even have an Islamic Republic of Iran? Or are we going to return to, a kingdom of Iran, a constitutional style monarchy, a Republic of Iran, with some kind of elected president? We don't know, but we know that there are a lot of people who are just fed up with the current Iranian regime. So we pray for the Lord's will to prevail. We do know that things can change very quickly, and we've definitely been following them in the past year. All right, and so that concludes our news roundup. Now, before we conclude today, a few housekeeping items for the next 2 weeks or so. We will be leaving tomorrow for the IMCS Rabbis Conference. And that means, so when we go out of town like this, there's not going to be Messianic Insider. Doing that would be impossible with just the setup, the internet, the time it takes to prepare an episode, collecting news stories, etc. So as we've done in the past, we will shift toward a day-by-day McKee moment shorts, just giving you kind of a daily log of, hey, we've left, we've arrived. These are some of the things which are going on. And if there's a major news story, I will mention it. But these are the times when I'm able to get away from the office. These are the times the Lord gives me some supernatural impressions about what's going to happen in the future, in the next year, with our ministry, with our family, even with me. So you can definitely keep us in your prayers with that. When we go to this rabbis conference, of course, we're going to be interacting with Messianic leaders from all over the world. This is the largest leadership conference in the Messianic community. And yes, I've been praying the past few weeks for wisdom and discernment for, okay, what do we need to know about the future of the Messianic movement? I am giving a 10-minute talk. Not sure what day yet, but it will be posted as it's been posted in years past. I'm going to be speaking about avoiding newspaper eschatology. So reading messages into current events while at the same time paying attention to current events. So pray that that is received well. And I will be taking some busy work to do with me. I've got to be, doing some pre-work, some preparation work for 1 Corinthians for the practical Messianic update. And yes, just keep us in your prayers and your thoughts during the next few weeks while we're gone. And I'll keep you posted on everything that is occurring and some of the impressions the Lord has given me. It was 3 years ago at the Rabbis Conference. We relaunched Messianic Insider, which was huge. And of course, we went just once a week for a while. And then it was last year when I got the impression it was time to use StreamYard, and that's gone really, really well. And while I'm not getting the impression that we're going to have any huge changes on that level this year, I definitely know that just getting away from the office, being in another place, that's when the Lord can really speak to you about certain things, because you don't have all the regular distractions to take your attention away. Okay. As always, on behalf of Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and they're really needed right now, and support for all of our ministry efforts, especially those of you all who have given a special year-end offering. And please, if you have not, be sure to give this live stream, this episode, a thumbs up or a heart. It'll help our exposure on social media. We will see you again soon with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.